Hi, this is Greg Garrett. I'm here at Gladstone's library, the prime ministerial library devoted to William Gladstone, located in Harden, Wales, a small village in northeastern Wales near the English border. It is a place of study and reflection. I'm in one of the main reading rooms of the library, the theology room, and I'm here today to continue my conversation with you about unchristian politics. The Gladstone Library is the location for these talks because, as I've said in earlier installments, this is an area in which people take politics and theology quite seriously. And Gladstone himself was somebody who consulted his faith, who read widely, who studied the scriptures, and tried to come to legislative and leadership policies that reflected those things. We've talked about how secular values can creep into our political decision-making and voting. We've talked about how the distance that we place between ourselves and those that disagree with us can cause us problems in listening to them and in fearing and hating them. We've talked also about how often with those who differ from us, we feel that they hold very little of the truth, and thus we don't feel necessary the need to compromise or come to any sort of accommodation. When I consulted my Facebook friends and asked them about some of the things they felt were most unchristian about our politics, another of the things that they mentioned was an extension of what we've talked about so far. They mentioned the idea that the pride and the hubris of some of our politicians stands in the way of our attaining what we might think of as a Christian polity. And we can think, of course, of leaders who have insisted upon their being right, even as events were proving them wrong. We have seen people who insisted on the strength of their position, on their intelligence, or on the intelligence of their intelligence, that they were right. And so it is that we've come to a place in our American political life where many people are feeling forced out by people who are righter than we are. In recent days, the Republican senators Richard Lugar and Olympia Snowe have said that in the current attitude of American politics, there is no place for people like them who are willing to listen to and perhaps even work with those on the other side of the aisle. This is a problem in terms of Christian politics, no matter who is practicing it, whether it's left or right, because the pride and the hubris that's exhibited when we fail to consider that we might be wrong, and the pride and hubris that's considered when we say that God is on our side, perhaps even more so, makes this a distinctly problematic issue. The Bible and the Christian tradition are full of instances in which those who are seeking pride and power are brought low. The great Old Testament, Hebrew Testament scholar Walter Brueggemann writes about the sort of problematic book of Joshua, that it is a book about the destruction of empire, about how empire is being laid low because the powerful are not to be permitted to run roughshod over the rest of the planet. In the letters of Paul, Paul often talks about the idea that weakness is strength, and in weakness and in uncertainty, God is working. In fact, in the most dramatic example of all of power being reduced to weakness, Paul talks about the incarnation, about how God, who was above all things, was made low and brought into this flesh that we bear. And so the Christian belief, Christian history, is full of examples in which pride and power go before a fall, and weakness and uncertainty, but faith in God, are to be exalted. Our own hubris comes when we judge other people, or when we think that we ourselves are so superior that we are not to be judged by other people. So when we are smug and secure in our own superiority or the superiority of our ideas, we are truly committing a sin against God and against each other. In Augustine's Confessions, he writes often, this most brilliant of human beings, of how little it is that he truly has to boast about. I am, he says, a sinner, redeemed by the love and grace of God. That is what I have to boast about. And rather than God being on our side, perhaps we should do as Bono said in his recent sermon to the American Prayer Breakfast. Perhaps instead of insisting that God is on our side and acting accordingly, we should find out what God is doing and get on God's side. Perhaps in that way, we could avoid this truly unchristian form of politics.